Season 9, which is the final season of The Flash, was one of the worst seasons in the show ever. Season 9 has some of the worst episodes in The Flash. Overall, it had 2 good episodes out of the entire 13. The first highly rated episode is Season 9, Episode 9, titled It's My Party and I'll Die If I Want To, where Arrow returns to help Barry defeat Bloodwork on Barry's birthday. I really liked this episode, especially because Arrow returned and their final conversation was so good. And also, Kid Flash returned. The second highly rated episode is Season 9, Episode 10, titled A New World Part 1, Reunions, where Barry goes back to the night when his mother died. For Season 9 quality, that episode received good reviews, even though I believe it could have been much better. That quality of episode placed in Season 1 would probably be averagely rated. I also believe that this episode should have been the finale of The Flash, so that's what I will go into in this video. What if the series finale of The Flash was A New World Part 1, and how can this episode be improved further? For this video, I will be calling this episode the Full Circle episode, because the real title is pretty long. The real title is A New World Part 1, Reunions. Also at the end, I will make a new title for this episode since it would actually be the finale of the show instead of the beginning of a 4-episode arc. First of all, the Full Circle episode should start with the original intro of The Flash, like it did in the real Flash finale. Second, that means the Cobalt Blue arc gets removed completely. So that removes the first scene of this episode where Eddie Thawne is introduced to us and the ending scene of this episode where Eddie Thawne is struck by lightning. These scenes were actually pretty good, and I especially like the cinematography of the first scene, but for this video I am making the Full Circle episode the finale of the show, so Cobalt Blue never happens. That also means that Barry does not just randomly get teleported into the year 2000, so a completely new story needs to be thought for that, which I have an idea for. I'll explain that idea now. So the new story that would build up to the Full Circle episode is that throughout the entire season, mysterious things would be going on. People linked to Barry's past disappear. Strange abnormalities occurred that Barry's trying to figure out throughout the season. This would also mean that we get to see Barry's police skills at work. Old, smaller villains reappeared throughout the season because time is becoming a mess. But not main villains like Zoom or Savitar, because we already know how that went in the real Flash finale. It would also remind us of old times to see old meta villains, but these villains are like displaced through time because the timeline is messed up in this season. Then, the episode preceding the Full Circle episode ends with the scene of Reverse Flash going back in time to kill Barry's mother. This is building up to what will happen in the finale. Now, the finale. It starts with Iris about to give birth at the doctor's, like in the real finale. Then she vanishes, just like how people have been vanishing because of the abnormalities. Barry gets really upset and tries to think about why this is happening. He enters the Speed Force for answers, and the Speed Force just teleports him into the year 2000. The episode proceeds as it did normally, with Barry visiting Joe and figuring out that today was the day his mother was murdered by the Reverse Flash. Then he meets his parents. There is an issue in this episode where Barry's parents seem too obsessed with someone that they just met, so that should be fixed. Like the part where Nora asked Barry to stay with them should be cut out. They may be really nice and helpful people, but it seemed a little forced and a bit extra, so if those scenes were combined into one, it would seem more reasonable. That way, Nora and Henry do not seem too involved with this stranger. Now, Barry and Thawne meet. They have their conversations like it happened in the episode, except the only difference is that Thawne is purposefully there. What actually happened in the Full Circle episode was Thawne was put there by the negative Speed Force. Since the Cobalt Blue arc is gone, the part where the negative Speed Force and Barry have a fight is gone. That also means the scene where Joe picks up the Cobalt Blue stone is gone as well. Now it is time for Barry to become the future Flash that Barry sees as a kid. The episode happens as normal, with Dawn and Barry having that conversation, with Barry giving him a chance to leave now.
You can still have a better life. The life you once saw for yourself. Don't you see, all we do is cause each other pain. But tonight, you can change all that. If you just walk away.
I know a lot of people thought that this was foolish of Barry for even giving Dawn a chance to not kill Barry's mother, which would destroy the timeline completely, but I thought it was fine and good enough to leave in the finale. And it is really cool how fast Barry has become because he gives Dawn like a 5-second head start here. That night happens as normal with Nora dying. Alright, now I will explain why the timeline abnormalities are relevant to my fixed version of the Full Circle episode. Now, the reason these timeline abnormalities have been happening in my version of the Season 9 storyline is because the original timeline Flash has now completely disappeared from the timeline. The timeline was breaking because there is no Flash that goes back in time to let his mom die and save himself because the original Flash is gone. So Barry was supposed to replace the original timeline Flash. That was the mystery he had been trying to solve throughout my version of Season 9. And then, when he visits the Speed Force after Iris disappears, the Speed Force teleports him to that day on March 18th, 2000. That keeps the timeline intact since he makes the events that happened that night proceed as normal, and he replaces the original timeline Flash. This storyline is my idea of what could make the Full Circle episode perfect, and also make it the perfect finale. It would also be a really good storyline for Season 9 entirely, a trip throughout Barry's past where he's visited by old villains from the timeline breaking in the beginning of Season 9, a mystery to solve on why these timeline abnormalities were going on with Barry's CSI skills shown at work, and an amazing show ends the way it started with Barry going back to the night his mother died. No Red Death, no Cobalt Blue, and no Cobalt Blue Legion. These characters and ideas could have been good with a proper writer, but I already went into that in my Everything Wrong with the Flash video. If you have any questions about my new storyline, since it may not have been explained the best, I'll answer questions in the comments. Well, the episode would not be completely over yet, since it is still the Flash finale. There are still some more things that need to happen, like Nora being born. So, since the timeline is back to normal, Iris gives birth to Nora, and they have a gathering at Barry's loft. Caitlin becomes normal again if it can fit into the 40 minutes of the episode. Otherwise, Keone is still fine, but Caitlin would make this episode even better than having Keone. Cisco and Caitlin both visit the party, just quick cameos, maybe even Diggle comes over. And obviously the new Team Flash has to also visit, even though I would rather that they would not, like Chester, Cecile, and Allegra, but they also visit. Then Barry has his final speech. It starts with Barry telling Iris that there is one more thing that he needs to do. He says his speech, but instead of giving his powers to new speedsters, he goes back in time and throws the lightning bolt that struck him in Season 1, Episode 1. That is the final thing that he needs to do to keep the timeline intact. He gets his powers and his mom's death happens as normal. And that ends the show. I think that since this episode is filled with so many events, there are chances that it goes over the limit of 40 minutes, but since I'm also cutting out the intros that happen in the beginning of the episode with Chester, Allegra, Cecile, Joe, and the cringe scene Keone has in the beginning, the time limit will probably balance out. And I'm also cutting out the fight scene between Joe and Barry, and his speech will also be shortened a little because he does not give his powers to new people. Some small things that also need to be fixed are these bad CGI shots. This reverse flash shot is probably the worst, and the lightning in the background of Barry also looks pretty bad. Fixing that is what I think would make this episode perfect. These solutions and ideas would not just fix the finale of The Flash and the Full Circle episode, this is also a fix, in my opinion, to the entire season with a new storyline. But mainly I'm focusing on the Full Circle episode, which was really good for season 9 quality, but still could have been better by not involving itself in the Cobalt Blue arc. And now the new name for this episode, since it can't be called A New World Part 1 Reunions, I have some possible names. The Impossible, Fade Out, so it's the same as Arrow to keep continuity between an Arrowverse show. The Fastest Man Alive, Reunions, Flash Out, Gone in a Flash, Racing Time, and these are some names that were generated from ChatGPT. The Final Run, End of the Line, The Speed of Forever, Time's End, and Racing to the End. I have picked Time's End as the name of the final episode, but if you think another name would be better, put it in the comments and I'll see. Thank you for watching and see you later.